This is the Teacher Wellbeing Podcast, a weekly show to help you prioritise your health, happiness and well-being so that you can thrive in the classroom and in life. I'm your host, Ellen Ronalds-Keane. Enjoy the podcast. Welcome to the Teacher Wellbeing Podcast. I'm really glad you're here. So I thought I'd better start off with explaining why I'm doing this podcast, what the podcast is even about, what self-care for teachers is, who I am, who the show is for, and what you can expect from this podcast going forward. First and foremost, Self-Care for Teachers began its life as a Facebook support group that I started about 18 months ago. And it's sort of expanded from there into a blog and coaching services and a series of wellbeing resources. Self-Care for Teachers is basically an online wellbeing hub founded by me, Ellen Ronalds-Keane. You can find it at www.selfcareforteachers.com.au. So I'm a teacher, a wellbeing coach, and a passionate self-care advocate. I really understand the demands of the teaching profession because I have been a teacher myself. I've also been on my own journey of illness and burnout, and I know how powerful self-care can be. I know how powerful it was for me in reclaiming my health and my happiness, both inside the classroom and, just in my day-to-day life. In the next episode, I will share more about me and tell my story and how I've managed my own well-being as a person first and a teacher second. So look out for that in episode 2. So why self-care for teachers? Why teacher well-being? There's a lot of talk in the media and various political circles these days, about education. And it often centres on the idea that teachers are the problem. Teachers need to do more, be more, achieve more. There's this constant improvement agenda coming from a number of different angles. Maybe it comes from your actual workplace. Probably you're also seeing it in the media with the teacher bashing that goes on in certain publications. Maybe it's from people in your neighbourhood or the community in which you live and work who are constantly demanding more. Some of this is reasonable. The government invests a lot of resources in the training and ongoing development of teachers, and they expect to see results. And obviously, most teachers got into the profession to provide those results. We want to be able to achieve more and help the students in our classes succeed. We want to make a difference. That's why we're here. However, there is an increasing number of teachers suffering stress-related illness and burnout. And I'm going to do a whole episode about that coming up soon. Some of these educators who are suffering from stress-related illness and burnout, they struggle through at a reduced capacity, but quite a lot just leave the profession altogether. There's a really high attrition rate in the first 5 years of early career teachers. So either way, whether people are struggling through and manage to tread water and keep going, or if they're just opting out because it's too much, either way, something clearly needs to change because it's not the way our education system is going to thrive going forward. Happy, healthy people are more effective teachers and more productive members of society. Many teachers and educators put everyone else's health and happiness before their own because they want to make a difference. However, it backfires because the external expectations and demands of the job just keep increasing regardless of the dwindling reserves of the teachers that are providing that. So the plain safety message that I'm sure we've all heard every time we get on a plane is all about self-care. It's that idea of fit your own oxygen mask before helping others. This is what we as teachers need to learn and practice in order for us to go on making a difference long into the future. And that's basically what this podcast is about. It's about facilitating and contributing to the conversation about teacher wellbeing, positive schools, and burnout prevention. I want to be part of that conversation and I want to kickstart that conversation in places where it's not currently happening. I want to inspire and empower educators of all kinds to take back control. Take back control of your health and your happiness by being proactive about your wellbeing because it really does make a difference. So empowerment is a really key message of what this podcast is about. I also want to give you permission to put yourself first. And I want to remind everybody of the benefits of that so we don't get stuck in this place where we're waiting for somebody else to tell us that it's okay to take whatever actions need to be taken to look after ourselves. If you're waiting for somebody to do that, that's my job right here. You have permission to put yourself first because it's actually good not just for you, but for all the people around you. I also really want to advocate for teachers and their well-being and to promote the teaching profession. That's very important to me. I don't know exactly what that's going to look like going forward. I'm still at the beginning of this, obviously. This is only episode 1 of this podcast. And depending how things develop in the future, I don't know what that's going to look like. But there will be opportunities for you to be involved as well with promoting the teaching profession and advocating for teacher well-being and a more sustainable workplace and workforce for teachers to continue to deliver the amazing work and the amazing difference that they make in children's lives without burning out and wrecking their own health in the process. So basically, I want to improve the well-being of staff and students to create school communities that thrive instead of just survive. I want us to flourish. I want schools to be happy, healthy places, not just for the students, but for everybody that goes there, everybody that works there. And I truly believe that by doing that, we will make a bigger difference in this world. Intentional, multifaceted self-care can transform our lives and the lives of those we work with. So that's the intention of this podcast. It's the intention of the Self-Care for Teachers movement. It's to support each other in prioritising our own self-care and each other's self-care to be the best version of ourselves as possible as human beings and as teachers in the education system that doesn't do this very well yet. I think we're moving in the right direction, but there's still a long way to go. So yeah, it's starting and maintaining a conversation about how intentional, multifaceted self-care can transform our lives and our workplaces and the world, basically. So who the hell am I? Good question. I'm so glad you asked. I began my career as a high school music, Japanese and English teacher, and I've gone on to do further study to become a transformational coach, a meditation teacher, and I'm a writer, a speaker, and a chronic disease thriver. I had some major health events in my university days, including thyroid cancer, which I'll be talking more about in episode 2. And probably because of that, I found that I was even more prone to burning out in the first couple of years of my teaching career than most. I really see myself as the canary in the mine shaft in that way. I think I am less robust, and therefore the aspects of the education system that are unhealthy for teachers probably showed up for me a bit sooner. Just like a canary's tiny little bird lungs will give up sooner than the big burly miners. But if the warning signs are ignored, then pretty soon they'll be in trouble too, no matter how big and burly they are. So I'm really passionate about preventing teacher burnout and improving teacher wellbeing and supporting teachers to overcome the barriers to self-care, because there are a lot of barriers, and I'm going to do an episode about that probably in episode 7. Like I said, I started the Self-Care for Teachers Facebook group about 18 months ago, and I fairly regularly post helpful wellbeing tips and tricks and articles and reminders in there. I'm also on Instagram, and I have a Facebook page too. At Self-Care for Teachers is basically my handle everywhere. So come on over, hit like and follow. And also just a reminder that if you're enjoying this, subscribe in iTunes so you won't miss an episode of this podcast going forward. When I'm not teaching or coaching or practicing self-care myself, I enjoy writing a blog and reading or listening to podcasts about health and well-being and human behaviour. I like doing a bit of yoga and eating cafe breakfasts. And the rest of the time, I basically just like to hang out at home in my tracky dacks with my husband and my cat. So basically, over the last 10 years, I learnt the hard way that life's not only easier, but I am happier when I look after me. And consequently, I'm actually more able to look after others. And I'm more effective in doing so when I'm well myself. So I'm a better teacher, better colleague, better wife, daughter, friend, and all-around human being when I prioritise looking after myself first. It's kind of counterintuitive, but that's basically the plain safety message. Self-care changed my life, and I really want to help others feel better too, everywhere, but particularly in the teaching profession, because that's where I've spent most of the last 10 years, and I see a great need for more policies and systems which support well-being within that system. I really very much want to help change and help contribute to some of the systemic changes that are starting to happen around schools, supporting their staff well-being equally as much as they support the student well-being. So that's That's my long-term goal. What can you expect from this show? What is it going to be going forward? It's going to be a mixture of interviews and monologue episodes. The one I'm doing right now is a monologue. It's just me talking. The interviews are going to be 50-50, hopefully, with health and wellbeing and educational experts and ordinary teacher stories. So there'll be people coming on and sharing whatever their area of expertise is in a particular health and wellbeing field and how that can help you in your life. But a disclaimer on that is that they won't be pedagogical classroom practice experts. They may be school or teacher related experts. However, this is not a podcast about classroom practice. It's not about pedagogy. It's about the way that health and well-being of teachers impacts pedagogy, but it's not about pedagogy itself. So, for example, I have episodes coming up with practitioners in a range of health and well-being spaces like food and diet, exercise, mindset, meditation. I'm interviewing an exercise physiologist, a meditation teacher, a food coach, an anxiety coach, actually a number of coaches, and even a family lawyer. So it's going to be really interesting. And of course, if you have any particular suggestions for guests or topics, please do send them through. You can email ellen@selfcareforteachers.com.au, but there will be a link in the show notes over at selfcareforteachers.com.au/podcast. So there'll be a mixture of those experts sharing health and wellbeing tips and real teacher stories. So I've already started recording some of those and they've honestly been amazing. I've had some of the best conversations with everyday actual teachers and what their experience has been, what challenges they've experienced and how they overcame them. And it's really interesting to see some of the themes coming through. I'm really excited to see some of those stories from real teachers here. Again, if you think you or another teacher you know has a really great story about their teacher wellbeing journey, about recovering from burnout, about prioritizing their health and happiness and well-being and the impact that had on them as a teacher. If you would like to volunteer to be a guest on the show, hit me up via email or Facebook. I'd love to hear from you. At the same time, there will be monologue episodes from me talking about a particular type of self-care or a strategy or answering questions around the idea of teacher well-being. Some kind of information there to inspire and empower you and just constant reminders to look after you because you're a person first and a teacher second. I think that the balance between experts and real teacher interviews and the monologues will likely evolve and change over the time of this podcast. I really do believe that sharing of stories is a powerful way to teach. We can learn a lot from the stories of others. And that narrative genre can be really powerful in getting a message across, as well as the informative episodes where it'll just be me sharing some cool tip or strategy that I've learned. So I don't know how that's going to progress, but that's my plan at the moment. It'll probably be alternating an interview or two with a monologue every couple of weeks. Who is the show for? It's for teachers and school staff who are interested in wellbeing, interested in preventing teacher burnout and making our schools the happiest, healthiest places they can be and building a community around that. I mean, if you're not a teacher or a member of school staff, I think that this will still be a valuable and interesting podcast for you because I think a lot of the information about self-care is relevant for pretty much everybody. There's a big problem with burnout in a lot of industries. So I think that aside from the education-specific stuff that might get discussed sometimes, most of the information is going to be relevant for everybody. But obviously this is the Teacher Wellbeing podcast, so it's for teachers. It's not a show about teaching in the classroom, as I said. It's more about teaching around the classroom. So there's that concept of working in the classroom, in your life, in your work and your practice, and compare that to working on your life and on your practice. I would say that this is the on conversation. So as well as doing our planning and preparation and marking and reporting and meetings and all of the other day-to-day tasks that come with being a teacher in the classroom, of course, we have to do professional development, and that's working on our practice. It's a little bit meta. It's not necessarily the day-to-day stuff, but it's the stuff that happens ongoing around the day-to-day that allows the day-to-day to continue. I would say that this conversation is another meta level above that, which is working on ourselves and making sure that we are okay and we are well enough to carry on working on our practice and in our practice as well. So that's basically what this show is about. It's also not medical advice. This is going to be general information. It's not going to be specific prescriptions for you. And of course, you need to consult your own healthcare practitioners about your specific situation. The aim of this show is more to inspire and empower rather than diagnose or prescribe any particular way. Because I really also believe that self-care is not one size fits all. What works for one person will not work for another. We all have our own personal situations, our own personal conditions and experiences and backgrounds and our own interests that mean that what works for one person, what works for me, may not work for you. And so the aim of this podcast is to share a whole bunch of different stories of the ways people might be implementing self-care in their own lives, and also a whole bunch of different strategies from a bunch of different people who have expertise in those areas. And you can take what works for you in consultation with your relevant healthcare practitioner and leave the rest. You have total permission to let go of stuff that does not resonate with you. So that's what this show is. If you want to be part of the ongoing community and conversation around self-care and teacher wellbeing, then I really encourage you to come over to Facebook and join the Facebook group. Just put Self-Care for Teachers into the search bar and you should be able to find it. I'm also having a little review competition to get this podcast going in iTunes. So if you post a review in iTunes before the 31st of March 2017, you will be in the running to win a Wellbeing prize pack. So prizes include a copy of the book The Art of Extreme Self-Care by Cheryl Richardson, and also a teacher wellbeing coaching package with me valued at over $300. So head on over to iTunes, leave a rating and review by the end of March to be in the running for that. If you're listening to this after the 1st of April 2017, just jump onto the Facebook page or Instagram or my newsletter and you will be kept updated because I do run little giveaways and competitions fairly regularly. So if you miss out on this one, there'll be another one coming up. So there's also a resources section on my website that has some helpful links and resources that I'm adding to all the time. That's over at www.selfcareforteachers.com.au/resources. That's also where, if you want, you can join my newsletter. I post out a weekly reminder with a few tips and a thought of the week. On Mondays that goes out, and it's just a weekly reminder that you are a person first and a teacher second, and you have total permission to look after you. I will put the links to that in the show notes as well, which will be over at selfcareforteachers.com.au/podcast. And I will see you in the next episode. Thanks for listening to the Teacher Wellbeing Podcast. If you've enjoyed it, go ahead and subscribe in your chosen podcast player so you don't miss an episode. I'd love it also if you would leave a rating and review in iTunes and share it with your friends. This really helps the podcast reach more people, and together we can spread the message of teacher wellbeing to create thriving school communities. Don't forget there's also a review competition to celebrate the start of the podcast, so if you leave a review in the iTunes store before the 31st of March 2017, you'll go into the running to win some great prizes. Show notes for this episode can be found at selfcareforteachers.com.au/podcast. You can also find me at facebook.com/selfcareforteachers, and on Instagram my handle is @selfcareforteachers. So come along and follow me there.